Hi, so welcome everyone, and welcome to this year's Celtic Knot, or in Welsh we say Croeso I Cwlwm Celtaidd. And I'm going to hand over to Amy to kind of start us off with a bit of an introduction.
You're mil mágad, Gemma. Thank you very much. The going Ushlag Falta. Hello to all you lovely people, and welcome to Celtic Knot 2025 and our online community day. So this event is organised by Wikimedia UK and Wikimedia Community Ireland. I'll be handing you back over to a second to Gemma, and we'll be coordinating between the two of us the introduction. We also have Richard Neville on hand from the Wiki UK team, as well as Sophie Fitzpatrick, our Communications and Programme Coordinator at Wikimedia Community Ireland. Sophie will be in the chat to manage the room and friendly space policy. So if you have any questions or you need any help regarding the friendly spaces policy, you can find Sophie in the chat. Um, if just to note as well that if people breach the friendly space policy, they risk being removed from the meeting and won't be allowed to rejoin, but I'm sure we won't have any issues there. Richard will also be available in the chat for any tech support issues that might arise during the meeting, so do reach out if you do need some help.
Thank you, Amy. So moving on then to looking at the housekeeping, just some practicalities about how today's session will work. So today's session will run from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., but we will have a short break halfway through. We are also recording it as well. So if you don't want to appear in that recording, just to let you know to keep your camera off. And I can see in the chat that someone's having a problem with connectivity. So this will be being recorded. We will be sharing some links in the Etherpad. I'll drop the link into the chat now and I'll ask my colleagues to kind of repeat that periodically. But if anyone is looking for a link, we can share it there. Please keep yourself muted when presenters are speaking, which you're all doing beautifully for obvious reasons around noise, feedback, etc. In terms of questions, we'll have questions at the end towards the end of the session. So each speaker will speak, and then there'll be 20 minutes for Q&A for all of the speakers together. If you'd like to ask a question of a speaker, you can drop it in the chat. We just ask that you label it question and then what your question is. That just makes it much easier for Sophie to find them and collate them so that we know to ask. But if you'd rather ask your question verbally, you're welcome to do so. Just please use the raise hand function so that we can call on you in order and kind of manage that space fairly. The closed captions are enabled, so if you would like that, please let us know. And if you are having problems, if the closed captions are struggling with any of the speakers, just let us know and we can try and slow down as best we can. And finally, English is the shared language that we all speak to some extent. However, this is very much an event around language diversity and celebrating all of the amazing languages that we ask. So for practicality's sake, if you're able to do so, if you could ask your question in English or summarize any comments in English, but if you would like to express yourself in another language first, and that would feel good, you're more than welcome to do so. And I'll hand back over to Amy.
Thanks, Gemma. So we'd like to invite you all to introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't done so already, or even to do it again. So Inish doing Foods Fain, tell us about yourself. So what's your name, either IRL or on Wiki? What languages are you bringing to the event? What wiki spaces or projects do you work on? And what challenges do you have in your communities or with your languages online? So mar shampla, for example, is Misha Amy. I'm Amy. I speak Gaeilge, Irish, English, French, a little bit of Spanish, and maybe a few words in Basque and Italian as well. But Cod Futsa, Gemma, what about you?
So Gemma Dwi, I'm Gemma. I speak Welsh and English. I don't speak any other languages yet. I I'm quite new to Wikipedia at all, so I've kind of done a bit of editing in Welsh and English Wiki, and a little bit on Wikidata, but not very much. Yeah, and in terms of a challenge, I think often things aren't available in Welsh online, so I just can't use it. And also, I'm very, very lucky on my phone in that 90% of the characters that I need are available on my phone keyboard. So just enough that when it's not there, I can't be bothered to change keyboards. I just make a spelling mistake.
we're very lucky, I think, with Irish because we just have the fada or the elongated sound, or what would be called the aigu in French. So it's very easy to get the keyboard ready. So I'm looking forward to seeing all the answers in the chat. I'd also invite people as well, if you don't know already, if you find your name in the participants list in Zoom and go to the three dots beside it and click it, you should see a function there to rename. So you can rename yourself. You can use a different name, a nickname. You might want to put your pronouns in like I have and Gemma has, or you might want to put your wiki name, your wiki username in there, either just in case people might recognize you from your wiki username. So we'd like to invite you to do that as well. I'm going to hand back over now to Gemma.
And we've got already in the chat, we can see a couple of people introducing themselves and the spaces that they are in. So the Celtic Knot Wikimedia Languages Conference aims to bring people together to share their experiences of working on sharing information in Celtic and other minority and minoritized languages. And Celtic Knot is a place where people who are working on growing and maintaining their communities across the Wikiverse and beyond can meet, learn from each other, and support each other on topics like community growth, technical tools, or collaboration with partners. Today's iteration is the 8th iteration of Celtic Knot, and it's the 3rd online event. And on the screen, you can see a selection of images that are beautifully shared in Wikipedia Commons, Wiki Commons, sorry, since 2017. And following on from the in-person gathering that happened last year in Ireland, we're really excited to hear what the community has been up to in the last 12 months. So today we're hoping that we can hold space so that editors can connect with each other, people who might be editing either in the same languages as them, but also connecting with people who might be working in different languages or across multiple language communities, but to share tools, knowledge, resources, and things like that. And we're still very much in the planning stage of what next year's event might look like, but we are hoping that today's event can provide some inspiration, some momentum, and some learning towards that.
Thanks, Gemma. And on that note, those of you who were with us last year in Waterford or online might remember that our friends from Wikimedia Community User Group Malaysia had put together Pitabangan, which is a word that translates into kind of like a working party or collective effort. So they are back with their 7th iteration of Pitabangan. So since they started last year in Waterford, they've done an array of different Pitabangan, and they've put together this short video just to explain what it is and how you can get involved. So I'm just going to play this now.
It's been a year since we started Pitabangan, and since then, we've had 7 editions starting from Waterford and all the way until Nairobi. And now, we're back to where we started, the Celtic Knot Conference, and this time, we are going to celebrate with a special anniversary edition of Pitabangan. Join us for this very special occasion, and let's create content about all the host cities and countries of the Pitabangans throughout the past year in each our own languages. We're also very excited to announce that starting today, Pitabangan will have its very own logo, inspired by the Wakit, an indigenous agricultural tool that invokes the spirit of collective work for a common goal. So join us by scanning the QR code or by following the link on the screen. Together, let's share our knowledge and celebrate language diversity.
That is great. So thank you very much, Agar Mila Mila Magov, to the Wikimedia Malaysian user group for that and putting that together for us. So as many of you know, the homes of many Celtic and Indigenous languages between the UK and Ireland. So it just makes sense that Wikimedia UK and Wikimedia Community Ireland have partnered for the last few years to organise Celtic Knot to celebrate linguistic diversity through different Wikimedia projects. We've partnered over the last few years to bring Celtic Knot together, and the images on screen show a selection of that work that we've done to platform minority and minoritized languages in our own individual contexts, but also by partnering those we share common experiences of working Celtic and other minoritized languages and cross-cultural collaboration, which broadens the understanding of the challenges, tools, and experiences and the different contexts we're working in minoritized languages. So we definitely work a lot with each other and learn a lot from each other, which is what makes Celtic Knot so great. So while the name Celtic Knot does imply a focus on Celtic languages, it has since its inception been a space to platform and celebrate work done through minoritized languages and their communities globally. So we're very, very happy for you all to be here. So without further ado, I'll hand you back over to, I'll stop sharing first and hand you back over to Gemma to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Amy. Diolch, Amy. So our first speaker today is Hugo Lopez. Hugo Lopez is a long-standing Wikimedia contributor of over 20 years. Hugo is fluent in French, English, and Chinese and supports the revitalization of minority and minoritized languages through Lingua Libre. Today, Hugo is going to show you how you can use Lingua Libre to create a vocabulary list and make a minimal bilingual e-dictionary. So I'll hand over to you, Hugo.
So today for myself, I will mainly show you what we are building on with Wikimedia France and on Lingua Libre. Okay, so my objective is to show you this. It's a derivative product from for Lingua Libre. I forgot to introduce myself. Sorry, I was just running a minute ago. And I heard you presented me already, so maybe I will jump that. So we want to do actually with our Lingua Libre tool, which is a tool to record words. The end product should be the valorization and the providing the user with services such as dictionary or flashcard of these kind of things. We already provide this audio to Wikidictionaries, but this time, and we have 1,500,000 audio file already recorded, which are reused by some Wikidictionary. But one bottleneck we have is to add this audio to the Wikidictionary. We need bots, and we have very few bot master, so we are not able to spread what we produce on many places. We only have 6 Wikidictionary which include our audios, and then the rest of it is mostly done by human on Wikipedia for the name of people, for the name of place, and these kind of things. But if we want more valorization, we have to provide some actual service to the end user, not only to Wikimedia, but to end user. And this time, I want to do a very basic dictionary for minorities. So I built this dictionary, this little list of words, and with the Chinese translation in English and the part of speech opinion. I built it in something like 3 hours. And that's my objective, not for Chinese, because Chinese already have a lot of resources. But when we think about minority language, and we have a lot of them on Lingua Libre, we need to provide very easy to build system, like the user come, record this language, okay, but it should not be just to sit on comments. It should be then included in the Wikidictionary, but also provide and actually first we have a bias as Wikimedia, and we want the audio to be on Wikidictionary. But Wikidictionary is just one part, one very small part of the web. What is more meaningful is to have to serve this local community with a dictionary which they can spread in their community, and to onboard foreigners who come into their community. So in the case of Lingua Libre, we have something like, I can show you this as well. Okay, I can pronounce them or this kind of things. Thank you. So this is the dashboard of Lingua Libre. So what we produce so far, we produce recording in 314 languages. And obviously we have large language like French, Marathi, English, and these kind of languages. But we also have very more modest language, like Basque, Sicilian, and also very rare language like the Occitan whistle is just practiced by 15 people in the world, and we start to have 20,000 recordings, and we are on the process to build a dictionary with this data. So very small community. We also have other 300 other languages, and naturally we have some of the smallest community I work with, where about 2,000 people strong, and they don't have the their community is not large enough to have developers, they have a few activists, but most of the time that's elders. So ideally they need technical support. And so if we want to collaborate with them, we have to provide them and not Wiktionary a service. So the idea now that Lingua Libre is kind of mature, the idea is to provide an easy to build system for bilingual dictionaries. And how I want to do this is with two things. First, we have Lingua Libre. So Lingua Libre is an application which I will start from the start. Lingua Libre is an application like this, where you come, you create your user, you set which language you speak, you check your microphone, you provide it a list of words, then you record very quickly. In 1 hour, you can record 500 words. So in a few hours, you can make a 5,000 strong dictionary. And then you send this to Commons. So this is a system to record the language, the oral language and the pronunciation. But then I want to couple that with this kind of very minimalist, easy wiki editing, where you just, I clicked on edit. So you just make wiki edits with a certain shape, like I use this arrow to divide my data, but I have the minority language, let's say, and then I have my explanation here, the pronunciation, the definition, these kind of things. And it's still loading. The internet is not very far. Maybe it's slowed down by the Zoom. So the idea is the community write down a small dictionary like this, put it on a wiki page, and then when I come here, okay, sorry, I went a bit fast. Time out. So first, the community provides a dictionary. Second, they come here and they record the dictionary. And third, we have this system. And so third, you come to this page, you share the link to the list. So this URL, this name, this page name is the same as here. And so I use this, I put it here. And when I input this, it fetch the linguistic data, which is here. It will also fetch the audio data, which is on Commons. Here, these are my audio data. And it generate an interactive dictionary, which I had just moments ago. Okay, so I have a connection which seems to be very slow. So I can show you back here. So I'm back now on Lingua Libre. And so I show you how we generate the audio first. You already saw the end product, the dictionary. Now I generate the audio. So I'm Hugo. but I also have another speaker, my nephew, and I can add someone else. So I say my partner, Elsa, Years of Bird. This gives us a generation. She lives in Toulouse. Okay. And then she speaks French. She learned it in Marseille with a very nice accent. And then she also speaks like Basque language. Learn in Bayeux. Okay. And she contributes in Creative Commons 0. Okay. So by doing next, I save it. Okay, I have Elsa now, but I will focus on Chinese. So here, Hugo speaks Chinese. I go to the next step, language, and I select Chinese, Mandarin. I test my microphone. Hello, hello. It's work. I go to the list, and on the list, I will load the work I did here. So sorry. I will use local list, Chinese, and the title of my list is rich text. It's a text which is rich. Okay, and so I fetch my data, and my data here, my word to record are here. So the same as here, but just the first part, because I have the right arrow. And I can move to the next step to actually record. Here, I start my recording. Run, learn, na, lai, do, ge, nen, tu, re, zuo, shang, 没有, kan, 怎么, 现在, 电, ne, 带, li, 所, 谁, 读, 时候, 下, 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 谢谢, 先生, 喜欢. So here we have some settings. So we can record words, we can record sentence, we can record poems, shorter or longer text. We can tinker a bit about the audio result, the sensitivity, these kind of things. And here we have the shortcut. When I was recording, I used them a bit to return and to try to record again some word. So this was a recording step. I move to the reviewed step. Here, I select them all and I play. You let me know if you hear them, but that way I play the list of words recorded, and I can review and uncheck the one which are not good recording. Tu, ge, sha, si, ka, o, Okay, all is good. So I just publish these two commands. So this is sending immediately those audio to Wikimedia Commons. And so now we have the audio side as well. So when we have both the linguistic data here and the audio, which is sent to, oh yeah, actually, I already recorded them, so he is not sending them again. But I should have them here. Yes, they are showing up here. So I have all my my recording, and with my recording ready, and if my connection is good, or if all is working, he first loads the data, and then he will generate the multimedia dictionary. So yes, now I have the two sides of my dictionary display on one URL, and this link I could send it to other people so they learn the local and ideally the minority language. Oh. Okay, it's I have a bug, but the development is ongoing. It's working one time out of two, and so we can have a dictionary which is created in something like 3 hours. We can have 100 words, 500 words, and if you provide more work, you can, in 1 week or two, you can have a very solid dictionary. You can communicate in a community with just 3,000 words, like having a good daily life, going to do some shopping, hanging out with locals and communicating most of your day with the local language. You just need 1,000, 3,000 words. So if local needs which was reported by local communities is, by example, I worked with a tribe which was in Brazil, and the issues they have when they have a small community, they are just 2,000 people, and they are in Brazil, and they have the Brazilian education system which teach Portuguese language. The young people start to speak Portuguese, and nearly only Portuguese, like all the minority language. They start to lose their language, and not only the children from the local lose their language, but also they have newcomers from outside who have no way to learn the local language. And what I want to do, and the question I want to answer with this kind of service is to provide the community with very easy to build learning system, so the foreigner who come to this community have the resources to learn the local language and to then communicate, exchange in the local language, and not the outsider should not come in and unwillingly help to destroy language. So I also have elders which ask me the 2 points they made, where they need this for the outsiders, but they also need this for their own youth who don't have, some of the family already lost the language and they cannot learn it. So that's something the public here should be familiar with, I guess. And this dictionary is one solution to help with this kind of issue. I'd already made a demo of Lingua Libre. I can also go back and share a bit more of the feature. When we are on the locutor here, we have to state the name, the year of birth to give the generation that change the way people speak, the location for the accent. We want to have all accents of a language. By example, it's really a pity that we don't have English dictionary with Indian pronunciation, when the Indian pronunciation of English is actually the most common one. And there is many cases like this. For French, it's the same. We don't have much African pronunciation of French when it's actually the most frequent French is spoken in Africa. So we want the local voices, we want accent, we want the elder, the younger, and different voices. So we have many ways to record the language. We can record normal language. We also have whistled language. We also have sign language. And if I introduce sign language, by example, Irish sign language. Okay. I should have, yeah. I will have a video which help to record the word we want to record. So now I have a video to record me signing and this kind of things. Another thing is when you have a list like this, for example, I'm the facilitator, I make a list and then I can share it here. I have a link, I send it to the local grandmother or local teacher and he can record it. He will come to Lingua Libre with the list already recorded. Other tools we have local list, which are the kind of list I just show you. I created by hand here. But we also have other tools. By example, here I can find all the Wikidata elements which are nearby. So the name of the village, by example, this is very interesting because it carries some cultural history and the pronunciation is very typical and this kind of things. We have Wikimedia category. So by example, I can select English. English dictionary, dog. I assume there is, yeah. And so now I should have, this is not, oh, yeah. I have this kind of things which are coming up. We can make research with Wikidata queries. So you can enter some URL here from Wikidata. I will not show it, but when you do a query, when you do a random query, and then you need item labels, and then when you run it on the right, you have I think it's this one. This one, okay. Sparkle and point. And then when you put it here, so it may work. Something like that. I have to read the documentation every time I do it. And data lexem, now I'm with scene language is not very convenient, but I can if I am with French, I can type a word like a, and Wikidata lexem will get me back all the French words starting with the A. Okay, this is Lingua Libre as a tool. So then we have, as I said, we have the end product, which is a multimedia dictionary with the right pronunciation and so on. And given something interesting as well, which I want to share, is it just took me something like 4 hours to make this, including the queries to Wikimedia Commons, the query to Lingua Libre linguistic page, to this page. So that's very rapid now thanks to the tools we have to develop. So we can produce more services for the local communities. And last things I can encourage you, because we still have some time, I want to encourage you to go to Lingua Libre, lingualibre.org, and then you create a list, and the list should have a name which is like, if you speak French, that will be list FRA. It's the ISO, the three-letter ISO, three-letter ISO code. So list FRA, and then your title, my list. Okay, you can do something like this. If you speak Quechua, I think, oops. If you speak Quechua, that will be this. If you speak Italian, that will be list ITA, my list. And then you start to create a page with some words. And I can come back in 5 minutes, and I can guide you again to start recording on Lingua Libre. And in the minute, so so here I'm creating. I can show you straight. So I have difficulties to open the page, to be honest. My connection seems to be slowed down by the Zoom. Okay, so now I'm creating a French list. And what I do is I add my word. And then I can add special character, symbol, the arrow from here. And then I can put the English hello. So you can do the same right now with on your side and with your language. So this, by doing this, I create a first list. What I also often do, I just go to ChatGPT and I can ask this will work for the major language, but you will have to complete the translation by hand for minority language. Okay. It's not good enough. I add this. Abbreviation. Part of speech abbreviation, English. I still have 10 minutes, right?
Yes, that's correct. There might be, I know some people in the chat had mentioned feeling a little not quite clear. I don't know if there's anything, if anyone particularly wants Hugo to go back and go over a bit slower, or is everyone clearer now?
Oh, okay. Which part? Is it the recording or is it the dictionary or the editing?
It was back when you were doing the recording that it came up, but I'm just having a look in the chat now if anyone, if there's any particular part, but perhaps just if somebody hasn't seen Lingua Libra before, perhaps maybe going through the recording slightly slower.
Okay. Yes, I can do this.
Thank you.
I finished quickly what I was doing with ChatGPT. So for larger language, you can generate the list of words, and then you have a dictionary. You put it here, and then you can go back. Then you can go back, and that will generate your dictionary on the other side. I move to what you asked me in 1 minute.
Thank you.
So now I just created a list in French, which is actually a minimal dictionary. I have the French and the English. Okay. Then when I have this list, the idea is the next step, I move to the recording. For the recording, I go to the app, sorry, here. So I have my list. I go to the app. I go to my profile. I already set my profile as speaking French. Okay. So step 1, define the speaker. With his language, the place where he learned the language, the place where he lives, and the date of birth. You can have multiple speakers attached to your Wikipedia account. On the second step, language, I say I want to work with French today. I select my working language for today. I test my microphone. Hello. So the system give me back the word I just spoke. For the first step, I need a list to work on. So either I can add some word here, and you have the guideline here if you forget. Or I load a list, and thankfully I just created a list, my list. Okay. And so I ask to load this list into Lingua Libre to work on it today. Okay. I find myself with the same words that I just documented here. And now I will record this word to produce the audio version of this word so the people can learn the proper pronunciation. I move to the next step, which will be recording. When I'm here, I start recording. I use the arrow to go further or to go back. Aller, avoir, être, faire, dire, pouvoir, voir, savoir, venir, vouloir, prendre, mettre, donner, parler, aimer, passer, trouver, comprendre, penser, demander, répondre, travailler, finir. I stop the recording. I go to the next step, which is the review. In the review, I play all record. Okay, my recording are okay. If they are not, I uncheck them. And now I publish them to Commons. So I send them to the data store, which is Wikimedia Commons. Okay. And now they are arriving. Okay. My audio are getting to Wikimedia Commons. Okay. It's uploading slowly. And then now I have audio on Commons and I have my linguistic data. So I can go back to this site. I reuse the page name here. I put it here. You cannot access this page yet because it's under development. So I just have it on my computer. That's something which is coming, but it's not ready yet. Okay. Okay, but I return back to the Chinese dictionary because my code is right now is for the Chinese data, but the idea is there, and I think I will put this online in something like 2 weeks or maybe a bit more. But that's what is coming from the side of Lingua Libre, and what I encourage people to do is to start thinking in terms of community and in terms of contribution for your local communities, if you want a minimal dictionary, is to start to collect or organize to produce this kind of data. We are not just wikis, we are also communities, and we can produce dictionary fairly quickly if we organize well, like to produce 2000 words, you just take the most frequent 2000 English words and you translate them in your language. You attack this at 4 people, and in 2 days you have your data. Maybe less, maybe one morning. So there is some coordination and some editor-ton to lead with these kind of things. But at least we have tools like Lingua Libre, which allow to record thousands of words in just within a week or two. And easy peasy, it's just 500 per hour or per half an hour actually. So we have the data, we can have the linguistic data. When we have this kind of data also for minority language, if we want, it's easier when you have this first step to then send it to Wikidata Lexem. So that's the idea, is to make a first step which is very simple, which have an immediate return on investment with a local dictionary. And so then that can also help Wikidata and help the community and so on and so forth. I think it's 3 o'clock. So that this is what I wanted to share with you. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Hugo. Thank you. That was a really kind of a deep dive into Lingua Libre there. And for anyone who perhaps hadn't used Lingua Libre before, we've made some notes in the Etherpad as well. It's kind of trying to step by step the different things that Hugo showed us there. So thank you very much, Hugo. I'll pass on to Amy now to introduce the next speaker, but just a reminder as well, if you've got any questions throughout the day, just stick them in the chat, and then towards the end, then we'll ask them of all the speakers together.
So, Nicola, if you'd like to put up your slides while I'm introducing you here. So our next speaker is Nicolas Vigneron, another long-standing member of the Wiki community, and has been a Wikimedian in residence in the Brittany Museum, the Clermont-Auvergne Metropole Heritage Library, and at the Clermont-Auvergne University Library. Today, Nicola is going to talk about Wikifunctions and how smaller language communities can use Wikifunctions and what's needed next.
Thank you. Can you hear me? You see my screen? Perfect. So yeah, I'm Nicolas Vigneron. I'm editing Wikimedia projects for 21 years now, a long time. I've got 7 million edits on all projects, mainly Wikidata, because yeah, it's Wikidata. And over the years, I started, like many people, I started on Wikimedia Commons. Then I found other projects, Wikipedia. Then I found other projects like Wikimedia Commons, Wiktionary, Wikisource. And then I moved to more technical projects like Wikidata. And now the new project is Wikifunction. So basically, you are hipsters. I'm talking about you about Wikifunction before it's cool. So when in a few years, in the future, when it will be very useful, yeah, you already know at least a little bit. Wikifunction can be very technical, so I will not enter in all the details. I will just, it's a lightning talk, so I will give some points. And if you have questions on anything, ask them, we can answer later. So, and in particular, yes, I will answer how it can be used for any language, but especially for small language, which is one goal of Wikifunctions. So what is Wikifunctions first? It's the newest Wikimedia project. It's a centralized multilingual Wikimedia project. Basically, it's for function, as the name says, for storing all the codes. You can think all the codes that we have right now in info boxes, in templates, module, things like that. So it's an old idea it was beginning, maybe it started in 2020, something like that, but it was officially created in the summer, August 2023, open to editing. It's active, but it's still the beginning, so not everything is there yet, but at least if you want to try, you can. And if I want to sum it up very quickly, you have commons, which is for centralizing all the files. You don't duplicate the files on all wikis, on all Wikimedia projects, on all Wikipedia. You don't want to upload the same photo of the Eiffel Tower in French Wikipedia, English Wikipedia, Welsh Wikipedia. So we created back in 2003, commons. 10 years ago, we did the same for the data with Wikidata. Basically, same in all the info boxes of all the Wikipedia. You don't want to replicate who is the new prime minister in France, which changed a lot right now. So if you want up-to-date information, you store it once in Wikidata, and then you can reuse it everywhere. And the goal is, the big idea right now is for Wikifunction to do the same with functions. If you want something simple, like converting miles in kilometers or pounds in kilograms, things like that. Right now, we have the same templates on almost all Wikipedia. The idea is to store it once on Wikifunction, and you can reuse it everywhere. But many more things. I see that the chat is on fire, but I will not answer it right now. I'm talking about functions, but what is a function? On Wikifunction, function is a very wide word, and basically it's any sequence of instruction. So it's a box with codes and things like that, instructions, where you have input, one or several input, and you have an output. And it can be, if you know programming, it's what we call lambda calcul, and it can be basically anything. What you enter can be a number, a string, a Wikidata entity. It can be a quantity. It can be ingredient for a recipe. It can be colors. It can be literally anything. And then it operates instruction based on that. Or you take the sugar, the water, the flour, and you make a cake with it. And the output also can be any data type. So for instance, on Wikipedia, you can, you say, oh, I'm on one Wikipedia article, look at the Wikidata item and generate in output the Wikipedia info box. Or whatever, just in a single sentence. Oh, I input kilometers, give me the miles, or vice versa, things like that. So yeah, anything that you manipulate can be written, can be seen as a function. So why use Wikifunction? Because hey, Nicolas, we already have templates, so why bother to make new things? The first thing, the most important for me, I'm not a developer, but I know how developer works, and creating redundant templates, redundant code, it's always painful to duplicate things because, oh, there's a very good template on the English Wikipedia. I will just copy paste on the Welsh Wikipedia and yeah, ta-da. Yeah, but sometimes people are updating the original template and you are not copy pasting every time the improvement. So code can, the original code change, but it's not synchronized. So it's better to store it once and then to call it everywhere. It's also in the true wiki spirit that we can work together. Oh, I know a little bit how to convert. I know the idea of how to convert kilometer in miles, but I don't know how to write the code. Oh, we can work together. Someone is writing the specification and other people can really write the code, or someone wrote the code, but there's something wrong, so you can test it. And yeah, wiki collaboration. Also, as is Wikimedia Commons or Wikidata, it's multilingual. I will explain a little bit more about that. And in the very far future, and maybe it will never happen, we don't know yet, but one idea, one goal of Wikifunction is to generate the abstract Wikipedia. Basically, in input, you have just one Wikidata item, and the output will be a fully written article, Wikipedia article, with the text generated with based on Wikidata data, of course, sentences generated, info box, everything. We are very far from it right now, but it gives us the direction we want. Like, how do we say in English? Aim for the star and you reach the moon, something like that. We want to go in that direction at least, and it make it directly useful for Wikimedia. And I say Wikipedia here, but it can be generate a dictionary entry, help on Wikisource or Wikicode or whatever. Many things are possible, or will be possible at least. Yeah, as I said, it's multilingual, but it's multilingual in two different ways. The first one, you know it if you go to Commons or Wikidata. You can change the language in the interface, say, oh, the website is in English, oh, the website is in Chinese or in French or whatever. That you know. It's still very useful, but it's there. And also it's multilingual in the programming language that you can use. And here it's also an improvement from templates or things like that, because templates is Wikicode or Lua, and Lua is not exactly, not always good programming. It can be limited, let's say. And right now we have three languages, which are Python, JavaScript, and Composition. And many more languages will come in the next years. C, C++, things like that. Maybe Lua also to be more compatible with templates, things like that. And the third one, Composition, is actually not a language. It's not composition language. It's where you compose function based on other function. If you already played Jenga or Lego or any brick building thing, basically you know that, oh, I can take this function and then put it with another function and another function. You can compose a new function. And it's very useful, especially for natural language, because you can say, oh, take the subject. If the subject is plural, then use another function for conjugating the verb and things like that. And you don't have to code everything. You can just assemble function together. Okay. So the best way to explain it is to take an example. I don't know if you know what is a cardinal. A cardinal is transforming a number written as a number in input and write it as a number but as a string. So for instance, in Italian, that I don't speak very well, but if I go in Wikifunction, you have an English label here because I choose English, but you see that it has been translated in other language. So if I change the language here, I can see everything in Italian or French right now, or other languages. And you can test the function like 123 or 123. And if I run the function, it will give me the name in letter as a string supposedly. It's running. So 123. And you can put very big number. I'm not sure it will always work, but probably. Is it working? Suspense. Running. Yeah, so I will not pronounce that because it's 123 milioni and yada yada yada. But yeah, I can generate a number as a string, which can be very useful because when you write articles, sometimes you prefer numbers, sometimes, and there is a function to do the opposite, of course. And you see, this is the big part of the function, but inside you have what we call implementation. Implementation is actually where the code is stored. and you see that there's 2 of them in Python. And then you have what we call tests. Basically, if you don't know how to program, or if you program but you want to make sure it works as you intended, you can create, yes, if I input 1, I want as an output uno. If I input this, I want this in output. And you can test it, and you see, oh, for all the existing implementation, it say, oh, that works as intended, or it does not work. So I'm not sure what 187 is in Italian, but apparently there's a trap somewhere, because hey, natural language, there's always trapped everywhere. So it fails for both cases. And you see that this one is the second one is a bit better, because for a very big number, here it fails, but here it passed. Yeah. So here is one function I wanted to show you. And yeah, why is it important for languages? Right now, and I think other people will talk about that later, most languages lack good NLP tools, natural language processing. So, for instance, just a spell checker, a grammar checker, a verb conjugators, dictionary generation, or anything, machine translation, yada, yada, yada. If you look for English, you will find them. If you want for smaller languages like even Breton or Welsh now, you have some tools, not always good, but you have some tools. And if you go in Whistle Occitan, clearly you have nothing existing right now. Or if it works, it does not work well. So we need to build tools for that. We have Lingua Libre is a tool for pronunciation. Lixsims and Wikidata can store some things, but you don't want just the data. You want to process it, manipulate it. Basically, you want function. Also, every artificial intelligence is not it's not available or not reliably available right now. And yeah, right now in Wikimedia code is duplicated and redundant, and especially for languages. I think every Wikimedia project has a list of languages somewhere coded, like, oh, FR is French, oh, EN is English, and so on. And we duplicate this list everywhere again and again because we need locally list in templates or things like that. And it's a bit inefficient, to say it quickly. And it would be better to store it once. And especially for sometimes it's not clear. Is it a language? Is it a dialect? Does it matter if it's a language or not? And it's not always clear how it's done. So if we can all go together on one place and decide, oh, this, we do it that way, or we don't do it, or things like that. Or I forgot the name when fallback. When you want the interface in your language, but it's not available, like, oh, I want it in American English, oh, it's not available, oh, I can give you British English instead. It's not exactly the same, but it's a fallback. It's by default, it's better than nothing. That's also something that is not always good, efficient way to store it right now. And Wikifunction, I hope one day will help a lot on that. So now for the call to action part, how can you help around Wikifunction? The first thing is, oh, you can go to the website, explore it, what is in Wikifunction, test things like how to generate a number. It's a simple thing. Look if there is one in your language. Does it work as intended? And if it doesn't, hey, it's a wiki. There's a talk page. You can write it and say, oh, I tested for this case and it does not work. What you can also do is translating. You don't have to understand code. If you're not a developer like me, you can still go to the page and there you can add in Welsh, for instance. And I don't speak Welsh, so I cannot do it, but here you can click on the little pencil, crayon, and write it and save it to have it available if you search in your language. And you can, if you are a bit more familiar with tech code, you can create new function. You can do it, as I said, alone or with the help of the community. There's a few functions around languages right now. And for instance, in Breton, I created myself the easier one, but sometimes I was like, oh, I need to do a loop and a check on something. And I asked for people to help me write it. So we did it together. If you don't know how to create the function fully, you can look at existing function and add new tests, add a better proposal of implementation, things like that on existing function. And also, I encourage you to keep in touch with everything happening right now. There's a lot of things happening. When we started 2 years ago, there was only strings, no numbers, no things. And now we can interact with Wikidata. We can do more and more things. I know that 2 weeks ago, we added a function around all the consonant mutation in Celtic languages. So yeah, it's going better and better every day. And yeah, if you have a question, comment, you can write it in the chat and we will see them later. I will just quickly look if there's obvious question. Apparently not, so perfect. And yeah, you can go to Wikifunction. And one important thing is if you go on the main page, we have every week. Oh, why am I in French again? Sorry, English. And because I'm French, I need to write it in French, English. Okay, so every month we have what we call the volunteer corners. So next is 6 October. It's on Google Meet, and for more or less 1 hour, you have a team behind Wikifunction presenting, oh, we have new things. You can look at this, you can look at that, or you can just ask questions. And very often there's a quick demonstration on, oh, I will create a Wikifunction before your eyes, and oh, it works, yeah. And you can look at all the recent status updates, like Wikifunction. Oh, that was yesterday. No, yeah, last week. Wikifunction is now available in Dictionary. Yeah. And yeah, right now they are developing, integrating Wikifunction inside Wikimedia projects. So that's the quick overview I wanted to give you. As I said, there's still a long way to go. Not every function exists. Not everything is perfect, but we are getting there. And yeah, it's still the beginning. So if you want to onboard while it's still easy things to do, yeah, please join us. And I can stop sharing.
Mila Magat, Nicola, that was great, really interesting, and yeah, really, really interesting. And I'm definitely going to sign up for those corners, those volunteer corners, to find out more.
So thank you very much to both Hugo and Nicola I was going to say this morning, but earlier on, for their talks. And we've got 3 more speakers in this second part. So I'm going to start by introducing Jason, who's our next speaker. So Jason Evans is the Open Data Manager at the National Library of Wales and former National Wikimedian. Jason is a Welsh speaker, and he uses his skills to promote the Welsh language, culture and history on Wikimedia platforms, including the Welsh language Wikipedia, Wikipedia Cymraeg. Today, Jason is going to talk about his work with the Welsh Language Commissioner as an example of how the public can work with authorities to create and improve content relevant to minoritized languages. Put my teeth back in and I'll hand back over to Jason.
Diolch, Gemma. I shall share my screen. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Usually it would
okay.
say that you started screen sharing, but that... There it is.
There it is. Good. Okay. Yes. So today I am going to talk about the democratization of public data. And in that context, it's public sector data primarily that I'm talking about. And looking at ways that Wikimedia platforms can be used to help tackle biases and language gaps that exist in public sector data sets, and a little bit about the importance of that in the context of AI and changing internet habits. So, a bit of context. Last year, Google did a big update to the way that you access, the way that they search, their search engine operates. It was called the Killer Whale update, and it led to a 50% drop in Wikipedia being referenced as a source of facts about people. Instead, Google was relying more and more on what it calls its knowledge vault. Now, the knowledge vault doesn't conjure up visions of openness. It sounds like it is. It's a locked down thing. The public cannot see what's in it, the sources of that information. And basically, they've scraped a whole bunch of stuff from all over the internet and used algorithms to decide whether it's reliable or not, with very little or no human oversight. So unlike Wikipedia, the public have no way of feeding into this data ecosystem or even finding out where the information's come from. Large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini operate very much the same way. They scrape information together, they use algorithms and weightings to present information to us, and we cannot influence that data at all or correct issues or add gaps in languages or anything when those issues come to light. And the way that people are accessing information online is changing. So some of you will have noticed in recent months that Google introduced an AI overview at the top of its search results. Early research has shown that when that AI overview displays, the number of click-throughs to websites drops nearly 50%. So already that's having a massive impact. And now they've introduced this AI mode. And this is an example of a question I've asked in AI mode on Google. The good bits, as you can see, this is in Welsh. I've asked the question in Welsh and it has answered the question in Welsh. It doesn't always answer the question in Welsh. It kind of decides whether it wants to or not, but it can usually understand the question in Welsh. So that's a good thing. The bad thing is, if we spot mistakes here, we can't correct them. And whilst this information is very good, what this does to kind of user behavior is that they tend to stay within the ecosystem. They don't go off to websites and fact check and go off to other sources, even though they've got the kind of clickable websites there, because they provide the information that you want in the format and the language that you want it on their platform. So it's very much designed to kind of keep you where you are. So experts believe this is going to lead to a big drop in traffic to other websites. It's going to change the kind of traditional habits of doing a search and going off to a website to explore the topic. Now, to try and illustrate this, before I did my talk, I looked up recent page views for Welsh Wikipedia, expecting to see a slight drop-off in the number of users. But actually, as you can see, since the beginning of 2025, we've had a lot more users than over the last few years. I can't explain this, but maybe minority languages are going to weather the storm a little better or for a little longer, and people do still want to go to Wikipedia rather than getting information from AIs, etc. So I don't know what the reason for that is, but let's celebrate it. There's lots more people visiting Welsh Wikipedia. Now then, you would think that public sector data and information services funded by the public would be influenced by the public, but by and large, public sector data is also curated and collected behind closed doors by public servants, with very little input from the public. Librarians and museums catalogue collections with little or no input from the communities who have shared or created those collections. Ordnance survey map our farms, towns, villages, often with very little local input. Now in Wales, we're starting to see this change, and I think that Wikimedia platforms like Wikipedia, Commons, and Wikidata can act as a vehicle for public engagement in the creation of public data. And this makes the process far more democratic. And in a world where it's harder and harder to feed into knowledge ecosystems that these AI models and search engines are presenting information to us with, it's really important for us to have ways to influence the data that's being produced about the places we live, our communities, our languages. So this is this diagram made sense to me when I made it. I don't know whether it makes sense to anyone else, but basically what the idea that I'm trying to kind of share here is that people, the crowd, share knowledge with public sector organizations via Wikimedia platforms. And then the public then benefit from the improved services that those institutions can provide because they've got enriched data, much more localized data. But what we also need is for those organizations to be sharing their data with Wikimedia platforms so we can align it to things like Wikidata, and that makes the whole process of round tripping and sharing data and providing that way for the public to feed data in much easier. So I'll give you some examples of how this is sort of happening in reality here in Wales. So a while ago, the BBC decided that the best place they could get data to produce a Welsh language map of Wales for an app they were making was through Wikidata. And they used Wikidata. So this is crowd-created and crowd-sourced data that anyone can contribute to, being used to produce a map that is part of a public service funded with public money. And I've been working closely with the Welsh Language Commission. They have a big data set of Welsh place names, and they advise on the correct spelling of place names in English and Welsh. And they've launched a new website now. And because of that alignment that we've done, the working closely with them, we're able to provide a much richer service on their website. So they are pulling in images from Wikimedia Commons. They've got links to Wikipedia, Wikidata, other public sector data sets that have become connected to this through Wikidata. And they've got sound clips that are collected and stored on Wikimedia Commons by the public, by funded projects like the ones that we've done at the National Library of Wales. And those are now available as part of this platform. So this leads to a better service for users, connects data from multiple sources, but it creates that conduit for the public to be able to contribute to and improve public data sets. And if people disagree with the suggested form of a name here, they can go to Wikidata and start a discussion about what the label for that item should be there, or they can add an alias. And even if there are differences between the way what the data says here and what it says on Wikimedia projects, the fact that those different sources are connected, both from the Wikidata end and from the public data set, it means that it's much easier to see all that data and understand all that context. And it helps AI models to understand the nuance and complexities of asking a very simple question like, what's the name of that place? Because the answer isn't always that simple. We've also been working with the Welsh Government. They've been kind of watching this work we're doing with Wikimedia projects and open data, and they've now launched a very simple data collection tool to allow the public to share data about places in their local area that aren't on maps. And the idea is that they're going to collect that data, feed it into their own data systems, but also systematically share it with Wikidata, with OpenStreetMap. And that is going to, again, make it much easier for us to kind of have this cycle of input from the public. So in order to kind of keep growing this collaboration, we held an event with park wardens in Eryri National Park, again in collaboration with the Welsh Language Commissioner, to collect sound clips, people pronouncing place names for a new data set that the government are publishing on mountains and lakes and hills in the national park. So we collected over 1,000 place names during the event, and these are from people that walk the hills, speak to the walkers and the farmers. They know all the legends and stories connected with the land. So these are the best people to be creating this data. And the sound clips were uploaded to Commons using the wonderful Lingua Libre. But we also, those sound clips are going to be fed back into that website, that Welsh Place Names website that the government have. So they will appear in both places. Another project we did that had a similar kind of ethos was during COVID, we asked people to take photographs of historical buildings in their local area. And we used Wikidata and WikiShootMe and Wikimedia Commons to locate these sites, to upload the photographs, and describe the images bilingually. But then we also donated this as a collection, a new archive, to the National Library of Wales, and shared it on the People's Collection Wales platform. Now, the library has millions of photographs in its archive, but the 2,000 images that were collected through this kind of crowdsourcing project through Wikimedia platforms, they're the only images in the whole collection where the data that describes them is fully created by the public, by the people that created the images, rather than an archivist at the National Library of Wales. And again, I think this is just a nice example of showing how the public can feed in. And I think from a GLAM perspective in particular, we need to start kind of rethinking that traditional structure where the institution is in charge of describing items and feeding that information, giving that information to the public, and rather it needs to be about how institutions can facilitate the collection and presentation of data. And I think that's going to help us secure that the ability of the public to feed into knowledge ecosystems online. And that's going to be critical, particularly for smaller languages, as AI marches on. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was really interesting and really good work in collaborating with different state projects. I'll just remind again, if people have any questions for Jason, I think there was one or two that came in throughout that. The chat's been hopping, so we'll get to those at the end. So Gurmila Magad, thank you very much. Up next we have Subhashish. So you're ready to go if you'd like to share your slides there while I introduce you. So Subhashish Panigrahi is a Wikimedian documentary filmmaker and nonprofit leader. He's built open source and open knowledge communities for over a decade. focusing on language technologies, Wikimedia projects including Audio Wikipedia and open access. Today, Subhashish is going to talk about the limitations of Wikipedia's ability to be the sum of all human knowledge when oral history cannot be cited, and what are some alternative citational pathways that we have.
So much. I'm struggling a little bit to share my screen. Okay. This is okay. Is my screen visible to everyone?
It's in the process of loading. There we go. Now we can see it.
All right. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I want to start with a question. When can we cite low-resourced language oral histories in the Wikimedia projects? I would love to hear your reflections, responses when we go to the Q&A session. The Wikimedia projects, by and large, do not support oral history to be cited as a source. On the other hand, knowledge is preserved across the world, across different languages, predominantly in oral forms, and oral history in today's context becomes a reliable way to preserve knowledge and disseminate knowledge, since we are very dependent on technology and the internet and so on. So citational practices beyond Wikimedia projects also largely focus on textual references, where references that are mostly provided where there is available text-based citation. And Wikipedia and Wikimedia have inherited that, this sort of dominant culture and practice in the name of sort of scientific way to preserve and share knowledge. I would love to share the quote of Sarah Ahmad, who said, the choices we make about who, what, and when to cite contribute to the structures that in their current form tend to privilege certain bodies over others, namely the bodies of white, cis male scholars at elite academic institutions. And if I extend her quote a little bit more in my own context, I'm from India, where there is a severe hierarchy within the society from an economic standpoint, and the Savarnas, who have been historically privileged, have decided whether or not something is art or something is craft, whether or not something is reliable or something is not. They also have access to institutions, and they also have decided whether some knowledge, some form of knowledge is erased or destroyed or distorted or appropriated. So knowledge, as we know, is very political and is as political as it goes. And what we see in the form of citation is a manifestation of that hierarchy and those political challenges. And this is Jimmy Wales' quote: "Imagine a world where in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge." And we're talking about sum of all human knowledge, whereas majority of the world's knowledge is in the form is in a form that is not accepted as a form of knowledge within the Wikimedia ecosystem. So we live with this paradox, and by excluding oral knowledge by design, Wikimedia projects, Wikimedia policies, and Wikimedia projects exclude majority of the world's knowledge. It's as simple and straightforward as it gets. So as we know, Wikipedia exists only in 354 languages of the 7,000 plus languages spoken in the entire world. And that is understandable because Wikipedia exists mostly in languages that are written, and majority of the world's languages are spoken. And 354 languages, some would argue, is a lot, as compared to many other projects that are available only in, say, 10, 20, 30 languages. And indigenous and endangered languages, as we know, are severely underrepresented within the Wikimedia movement. And on the top of that, we also have policies that go like no original research, and oral history is always looked at original research. So as I mentioned, it's not necessarily sum of all knowledge. It's some of knowledge that can be cited from quote unquote a reliable source, and that reliable source has to be written, and so on. On the other hand, when we think of language documentation and multimedia, the medium allows us to use sound and video in a controlled environment, right? We tend to share more when it's audio visual than writing. A lot of languages across the world cannot be written or are not written historically, and they are spoken. So if we try to even use scripts, writing system to write those languages, it's very, very difficult to express everything in writing, and hence multimedia allows to fully express. It also breaks the barrier of literacy, and people that are older and might not be able to write well, and so on and so forth. If we think of language documentation practices within the Wikimedia movement, I have taken 4 examples here. One is led by Zita Zage, who is a Wikipedian from Ghana, and she and several other Wikimedians went to villages there, collaborated with community elders, and these are communities that have been practicing, that have been weaving and have perfected the art of weaving traditional cloths, and they were able to document their process and brought all of that into Wikimedia Commons, and they used these images in different Wikipedia articles. In Nigeria, Franca Omasoye Igwe and several other Wikimedians were able to document the Ekpe language and culture, and all those media files were brought into Wikimedia Commons and were used in different Wikipedia articles. Amrit Sufi, who leads a project and is based in India, worked with other Wikimedians, and they were able to document folk culture, and these audio and video files were brought into Wikimedia Commons and were used in different Wikipedia articles. Wikitongues is a larger project. It's a crowdsourced project where contributors contribute video files, and these videos are mostly on YouTube, and they were then brought into Wikimedia Commons and were used in many Wikipedia articles. And all these are really wonderful projects, and a lot of Wikipedians were involved. But at the end of the day, the files themselves were used as representational media files within Wikipedia articles, and not necessarily source of knowledge, even though they are source of knowledge. And that, in my opinion, is a very unfair treatment to the communities and the people that are involved, and particularly the people that shared that knowledge. And if these files are used as citations, then they would be tagged as original research, and hence they would not be notable per policy. So we ran a pilot in 2024 that ended in the beginning of this year called OpenSpeaks Archives. This is mostly to understand, but also to challenge this praxis that we have within the Wikimedia movement. And what we did is we looked at documentary archives in private collection. As a filmmaker, I had my own archive, and from some of the films that I have done in the past, we took files. We worked with community members. I speak Balasari Odia, which is listed here in the first one, and we collaborated with other community members that speak the language, are native speakers, and we identified files that that include interviews with community members and are relevant to Wikimedia projects, and then edited those files. And we mostly looked at the content, and after reviewing, we translated and subtitled into the neighboring official language and English. That way, we, in a way, opened doors for more translations, and the subtitles and the files all went to Wikimedia Commons. Since these films were already cataloged at the Library of Congress, we were able to cite the films while using this file. So the video files that we edited and uploaded to Wikimedia Commons were used as source of knowledge and not representational media. We also adhere to subtitle guidelines that are widely used, so that became, in a way, standard subtitles, and that can be used across different languages without worrying too much about what to change and how to change. We did include new conventions for code switching. A lot of speakers would switch between two languages because sometimes they are in contact with other communities, and the dominant language is the vocabulary from dominant languages are used in their language. So it's natural for them to use a sentence, a few words while speaking their languages. So this is a project that's on Wikimedia Commons. And what we also did is we uploaded the time text, which is the subtitles on Wikimedia Commons. So if your language preference is set to a particular language and the subtitle is available in that language, it will automatically show the subtitles. And the subtitles, of course, are editable by Wikimedians. They are multilingual, and most importantly, they are accessible for people with visual impairment. Sorry, people with other different disabilities, deaf people. And then we retain the speaker's voice and their knowledge and the literal translation of what they said. So the words are not just words in the air, and the videos just don't represent the language. They are much beyond that. The speakers have voice, and they carry knowledge, and they share knowledge in these videos, in these recordings, in the interviews, and we ensure that we are staying as close to what they shared in our translations. And in this process, we also adhered to the CARE principles, which is collective benefit, authority, responsibility, and ethics. This is a global sort of widely used global principles, and they're mostly used for data sovereignty of communities. And then, so this is one of the examples of the project outcomes. A language called Gemehak Gipan or Kusunda, which is spoken in the western part of, which was spoken in the western part of Nepal. Now only a single speaker speaks this language. It's almost extinct, but is being revived right now. They're teaching the language to young kids. After 2 generations, children are learning a language that their parents and grandparents never spoke. And this is from a documentary film that we did in 2018. The eldest living speaker, Yanimaya Kusunda, who was 83 at that point, or 81 at that point. We interviewed her at her place. 2 years later, she passed away. So she never lived to watch the documentary, but her younger sister did, and she was actually aware, so nobody knew that she also spoke the language fluently. Most assumed that the language is going to be dead after her death, after Ganimeya's death, but her sister Kamala, who was in India, returned to Nepal. And so that was a good thing that she returned to Nepal. And the researcher that I worked with her, and together they asked for government support. And luckily, the government supported. And they started with a small batch of 20 students and taught the language to the kids. Anyway, so very quickly, the source films had a lot of advantages, a lot of privileges. We had GLAM partnerships in place, one with the Library of Congress, the other one with another language archive. And because of that, we were able to add the LCCN and EIDR and DOI, all these to Wikidata and wherever we used. So it was easier for us. The films themselves, when we released the films long ago, we released them under CC by SA. So the derivatives of the films were also under CC by SA. So it was easier to use them on Wikimedia Commons. And then we did receive a small amount of funding from the Wikimedia Foundation for this project. So that helped in editing, subtitling, and translation. Most communities don't have these privileges that we had. So for them, it would be really, really hard to bring something to Wikimedia projects and to also use them as a source of knowledge. So I would skip this one, just quickly say that the citation policies within the Wikimedia movement, within the Wikimedia projects are extremely harsh towards many communities, and they restrict oral knowledge. And a lot of technical and institutional support is also needed to make oral knowledge citable. I'm going to skip this one. What we're doing right now is a much larger project, and then it's going to be for 3 years. We've just began the first iteration of that project. And what we're trying to do is to argue within the Wikimedia movement that that oral history should be accepted as a form of knowledge and should be citable. Sorry, I have to skip a lot of slides. I didn't realize that I should have prepared for 15 minutes. Okay, so the phase one is what we're doing right now, and we're building tools that we heard from a lot of our collaborators who are archivists within communities and don't have training to archive languages. And these tools are predominantly built around low-resourced languages. We are documenting our process so that it could be forked and used in any form by others in different contexts. There might be it might be required for people to change things, and that's where OERs are very helpful. And we're also sharing the process, how we're building the GLAM partnership. So anyone else who's interested elsewhere might not know us would be able to do that. And of course, the content is going to be shared on Wikimedia Commons. Okay, so that's about that. Okay, thank you so much. And really sorry for taking 2 minutes, 3 minutes more.
No, thank you very much. A really popular topic, it seems, in the chat there, and lots of really interesting things that I've tried to make notes as best I can. But if anyone has any links or anything that they would like to put in the Etherpad, I'm pretty sure there's lots of people here who would like to kind of hear a bit more about that. So thank you very much. So we're moving on now to our final speaker of the day, which is Abigail Walsh. Abigail Walsh is a postdoctoral researcher at the ADAPT Centre at Dublin City University, working on the eSTÓR project, developing resources for Irish language technology, with a focus on developing and evaluating LT applications handling challenging linguistic features. She is passionate about promoting linguistic diversity and support for minority and low-resource languages in the field of NLP. Her research topics include multi-word expressions, syntactic parsing, machine translation, lexicon development, linguistic analysis, resource development, and machine learning. She is an active member of both the Parsing community and the Unidive Cost Action for Universality, Diversity and Idiosyncrasy in Language Technology. So Abigail, if you could bring up your slides, and I will hand over to you when you're ready.
Hi, thank you very much, Gemma, for that introduction. Can I ask, are my slides visible? Okay, great. So I'm just going to start a timer here on my left, just so I have some accountability as I go. And if I'm running over time, feel free to let me know to wrap it up. Thank you very much for that introduction. As Gemma has said, I work at the ADAPT Centre at Dublin City University, and the work that I do is on the eSTÓR project. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. I don't think there are many people I know here who've maybe interacted with eSTÓR before. So I wanted to explain a little bit about why we're working on this project, what it's hoping to accomplish, and kind of where we're at in terms of collecting data for the Irish language. So I'm going to be focusing on Irish language, but I'm hoping that, as is kind of tradition with the Celtic Knot series, that there'll be lessons that are applicable to other languages. And I'm also aware that since this is the last talk of the day, I know people are starting to get maybe a bit fatigued. I have these slides prepared in very kind of academic style with lots of text and things. What I might do instead is stop and ask people questions. So maybe have a little bit of engagement as we go. So if people want to, chat or answer things in the chat, that would be great, because then it helps me to kind of see what other people's thoughts are in this area. So I started off thinking about, maybe everyone here is already very familiar with this idea of language data, but trying to define what language data is, it's quite tricky to narrow it down to a simple definition. So I'm coming from an NLP background, that's natural language processing. So we try to think about these data sets in terms of how they look and how we collect them and what they're used for. Language data could be sounds, signs, symbols, things like spoken languages, signed languages, but very often when we're talking about NLP, natural language processing, we're focusing on the text itself. And then languages are quite difficult to model well. They have properties such as productivity and displacement, which means there's essentially an infinite set of possible constructions or possible inputs we could be looking at. And the use of language is in communication, but also in expression and creativity and offering people directions, sharing information. So how we want to interpret a language input, it's very highly dependent on context, history, and social convention. So all of these elements come into play when we talk about language data for NLP, for developing language technology. And I would say that in the NLP community, there's kind of a spectrum of understanding about the complexities presented by language data. So I guess my first question for the audience is, would you say that language data is well understood by people working on language technology? Sorry, I actually realize I can't see the chat while I'm talking. So maybe I'll just let that question kind of sit and I'll move on. So some of the challenging features I was thinking about are things like variability. So I've got, y'all, yous, you, use, you'll hear some of those different versions of you plural. Things like different spellings, the productivity. So a sentence that's maybe never been spoken before, the woman wearing the porous, reflective, crumbly yellow imitation leather cowboy hat walked her hungry pet piglet around the shoe shop in Sacramento. So that's a novel idea that I'm sure most of you, all of you have never heard before, but we understand it. And non-compositionality is another feature I find very interesting. So idiomatic language like cut a rug, paint the town, mixed up over the moon, caught red-handed, so on and so forth. And that's just within one language. You also have the language-specific construction. So if we wanted to communicate something like raining cats and dogs in Irish, we would say Cyrsh Ganna Gracie, which means raining cobbler knives. And I'm sure that other languages have their own way of saying this type of idea. The rain is coming down really hard. You've got features like ambiguity. This is a example I love is time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. And code switching is actually a big issue that we find. So people will switch in and out of different languages, like gracias for the lovely gift, está awesome, or in register. So this was a quote, I got approval from my students, and they said that this was quite fluent Gen Z speak. It's high key giving the order under appeal was not subject to any action by any authority till the order disposing of the appeal is available, or appeal. So the kind of idea that people can move in and out of different language modes. So when it comes to collecting data, then you have, of course, the first question being whose data? So this is not news to the people, the Wikimedians in the group, but there is a bias of who is represented on Wikipedia. Now, I did get these Wikipedians demographics from a survey in 2011, so I'm sure that these numbers are very different now, but there probably is still that language bias particular. I looked up some numbers on internet users worldwide from Cite today. They have statistics there. So you can see some of these graphs depicting different demographics are more prevalent on the internet space. These are not surprising, I think, statistics to anyone who's been online. This graph here was actually created by the European Language Equality, which was a initiative towards understanding what kind of language resources were available in Europe for European languages. So these are official EU languages, national languages that aren't an official EU language, and then regional and minority languages. So you can see in this long tail here of low resource languages, there might be some of the languages that people have mentioned speaking earlier today. I can see here for reference, if you can see I'm not sure if my cursor shows up on screen.
It does.
Okay, Irish and Welsh here are quite, high up in terms of low resource languages. You've got Breton falling down here, Cornish, and then as we go down this long tail, I'm trying to find, there's different Sami languages represented. I know someone was mentioned from Norway, so maybe you can have a look at this graph later and see where your language has been represented. But it's clear that there's a huge discrepancy in support for some languages in Europe. And this is just Europe, and Europe is quite well resourced in terms of multilinguality. So, in other countries of the world, this is even more market distinction. So this digital language equality was proposed by this European resolution that they wanted to create a state of affairs in which all languages have technological support and situational context. It's necessary for them to exist and prosper as living languages in the digital age. So this has been highlighted as a sort of intent by the European Union, and they've started working towards that with different sort of so the European Language Resolution, which was passed in 2018, but also with ongoing networking initiatives such as, I don't know if any of you have heard of Alt Edict, which is a European language technology edict, Alliance for Language Technology edict, and the edict is kind of a consortium of different partners across Europe. So you've got universities and companies and people were involved in government, and they're all kind of collectively coming together to talk about how we can solve these issues. So there's like two kind of major concerns, I think, that I feel as someone working in language data collection. One of those is this issue of copyright and IP. You know, when we're collecting data, you know, we've talked about who's the data representing and where's the data coming from and what language it is. But sorry, the who and who's represented, but where does it come from is an important question. And nowadays you find people just web scraping is just a very common approach to collecting data. So these are just titles of different blogs. I searched how to web scrape data, and there's dozens of blogs will pop up telling us how to use different tools to generate large data sets. But if you actually dig a little bit into the legalese of it, you'll see many social media companies actually don't allow web scraping without company permission. There's this paper that I found very interesting, web scraping for research and legal, ethical, institutional, and scientific considerations, that questions whether this actually might be against certain requirements such as GDPR or the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which I think is an American act that sort of calls into question the legality of these techniques. There was this really interesting journal paper I read on the heart of the matter, copyright AI training in LLMs, that really gets into what do LLMs do with data and how is the data that's being used in LLMs actually, does it fall under copyright or not? So I've kind of selected this quote from the paper. The primary question here is whether the LLM has created something that is indistinguishable from or substantially similar to an existing copyrighted work. So that's kind of what we need to decide if we want to talk about the legality of these data modeling systems and whether they're using data fairly. You know. Another big concern, of course, is energy in the environment. So some of these stats I pulled from various websites, blogs that are looking at the environmental impact. And one number I found was 226.8 gigawatt hours across the year. So that was a projection from 2024. That might even be higher now with each new GPT being larger with more parameters. So, you know, the rough equivalent of that is fully charging 3 million electric vehicles, charging 50 million iPhones every day for a year, power over 21,000 homes, or run the entire country of Finland or Belgium. So we're talking about massive amounts of energy, and that energy use is only going to increase as people become more and more interested in using these models. So the trend in NLP and in data science does seem to be that these models just keep getting bigger and bigger. So you can see here this graph represents the size of these GPT models as they grow over time. GPT-4 is, you know, the trillions, which is, you know, orders of magnitude larger than the original GPT-1. Not pictured here is GPT-5, but again, we're looking at this exploding scale of parameters. And this was first kind of discussed or maybe like made very public with the proposal of the chinchilla scaling law, which was that you have maybe a fixed budget for training. So in order to maximize the power of your LLMs, you need to balance model size and training duration to basically get the biggest, best model that you can within those parameters. So this was kind of the opinion of the day, was that you should fix your budget, and then within that you're looking at building the biggest model and training it for the longest time that you possibly can in order to get the most bang for your buck. But intention has kind of now changing a little bit, I think, in the NLP community, especially for minority languages that just don't have these resources, that are looking at smaller models, which can make inference faster and cheaper, and they're just easier to train with, you know, smaller GPUs. So a big part of that is, if you want to train a smaller model, is you need data that's very good, very high quality. You can't rely on just web scraping entire collections of data that may or may not be in the target language. Instead, you want to build clean, high quality data sets that really represent the language that you're trying to model. So that brings me to the eSTÓR project. So hopefully that background information is helpful. Again, I'm not sure if people in the chat are already very familiar with LLMs and NLP and all of that, or if this is something a little bit new in the, say, we're talking about language data creation sort of space. So for anyone that's not familiar, the Irish language is a Celtic language, which is the first official language of Ireland. So that does mean that we have EU official language status, which is very important, I think, for promoting Irish language jobs. You know, people need to be employed as translators to create bilingual documentation of all of the legal documents that come out of the EU. It also helps with, you know, sort of EU supports efforts to promote Irish language in the country. So all of these things actually help in our status as a minority languages. We have this kind of official status that does bolster initiatives to promote the language at home. So that's in the Republic of Ireland. It's the national language. In Northern Ireland, it is an official minority language, so it has a different status there. It is an official EU language. It is the derogation that was kind of keeping it in a special status has now ended, so it is a fully recognized EU language. And looking at some census data, we can see that while there's quite a large proportion of the population that can speak Irish, and that number is going up, the people who use Irish every day is quite a small proportion of the overall population, and that number does seem to be declining, although it's not declining, but I would say very quickly, and maybe that number will change a bit. It really depends on how the census frames the question sometimes, you know, whether people feel like they are speaking Irish every single day of the week, or do they speak it 2 days out of the week. But we can see that, you know, it is still what you would consider a minority language in the country. So the eSTÓR project then kind of came about in 2017. I mentioned this European Language Equality Initiative. And so from that, they kind of created this European language resource infrastructure. They wanted to build repositories where you could store data for different languages. So there was one built for Irish, and that was actually hosted at Dublin City University, where I'm from. And then this project then kind of morphed over the years. So it started with ELRI, the European Language Resource Infrastructure, and then it was taken over by the Principal Project, where it was looking at, you know, creating these collections of data to train machine translation engines. And then that became the Ireland's National Relay Station, which was kind of, it kept going with the funding from the Irish government. And that eventually became eSTÓR today. So eSTÓR is essentially a repository or a platform where people can upload data in Irish. So we take bilingual English and Irish data and monolingual Irish data. And this is funded by the government, so this is public data. So we don't have, you know, copyrighted data being uploaded here. This is all data that should be publicly available. And that data can't be sold or, you know, given away to a different company to use in creating commercial models. This is public data that's for use by the Irish government and the people of Ireland. So that's this kind of eSTÓR, where it came from. It's an Irish name that means language data hosted, hosted language data for computer processing, essentially. And while it's primarily meant to be about data collection, we also do some other work in sort of technical innovation and research and outreach, trying to talk to people about what language data is and how we can, upload it and use it. So this is a snapshot here of the website. Now, unfortunately, I didn't include a link to the website because due to constraints on where the website is hosted, it can only be accessed by people with an Irish domain. So that's something that we're working on for the next version of the project, is that this would be accessible by people outside of Ireland. So if anyone does want the link, if they are on an Irish domain, or accessing the website through an Irish-based IP, then I can share that. So I don't know if I need to talk too much about the broad goals. I feel like I've already talked about them, but we want to, collect data that can be useful for building language technology tools, ensure that this data is processed, that it's high quality, that it is actually meeting the requirements we need. And then also engaging with, the public, people who might be interested in contributing, and also ensuring that we're aligned with what the EU is doing. So the EU has kind of got their eyes on different metrics that they want to meet, and we're trying to work with them and with the government to ensure that everyone's on the same page. So I guess some key concepts that maybe we need to discuss are the language directions. So I said monolingual text is just one language, and bilingual is parallel text, so English and Irish documents. And the parallel texts are used for training machine translation engines. So we've got a sentence in English and the equivalent sentence in Irish, and with enough examples of these, then a system can learn how to translate an input sentence in English into Irish, or the other way around. You could see a sentence in Irish and learn what the English translation should be. So then that text is kind of uploaded in different formats. We call these translation memories. This is, if anyone has ever done translation before, you might be familiar with these, but essentially large collections of data that's formatted in a way that it's easy to use when you're translating a document. We talk about translation units as well, which are pretty much sentences, but just chunks of text that we would translate. The English is here and the Irish is here, and they're equivalent. So we call those translation units. And when we talk about the data domain, it's usually government data. So things like legal and administrative text, but also public body data. So things like press releases and newsletters, sometimes website content as well. So a couple of stats here. You can see the translation units, the TUs that have been published on the eSTÓR platform, kind of going up over the years. There's been a large focus, I would say, on parallel data sets over monolingual. And then something else we've been working on is digitization. So taking text that was originally in hard copy in these books and then turning that into bilingual translation memories, so texts that represent the data in the original hard copy. So to date, we've got, about 120,000 TUs translated from that. And from our 3 years of working on this project, what we've learned is that data processing takes a long time. You need to do a lot of manual checks to ensure that what you're processing is actually, handled correctly. PDFs can be a problem because text might not extract correctly or cleanly from both. There can be errors in the text. There could be somebody could upload a file that's labeled as being in Irish and it's actually just English text. Or they might mix up the titles and upload the wrong document. So, to check all of that information. And it requires highly skilled personnel. So people who have the skills to go through, to check the data, to ensure that everything is correct as it should be, that the metadata is labeled correctly, but also technical skills that they can go in and automate as much of the process as possible so that you're not individually checking every single one of the 120,000 TUs. So we found that it's actually much easier if you have an existing repository to just keep building and improving on that rather than trying to set up something else completely from scratch. So with our technical innovation, we've been working on, improving our ability to process text. So here's an example of a PDF scan of the original hard copy, and you can see that the quality of the page is quite difficult to read. The first image there shows sort of a blur, so that the print must have moved slightly when it was being printed out. Some of these documents are quite old. On the second page there, you can see that the page behind it is actually bleeding through. So if you run OCR on these pages, then you're going to get all sorts of errors. The OCR, so that's optical character recognition for anyone who's not familiar. But they actually can come up with some incorrect guesses as to what the original text was. And that takes then time to kind of manually correct it. So basically what we've been working on are tool chains, scripts that will handle a lot of this processing very quickly. So you can see from these images here on the left, this is the kind of PDF format that we might have the text in. It's formatted in a certain way. There's headers, there's page numbers, things like that. And then on the right, you see the TMX file format, which is the text is split up into sentences or translation units, and then stored in these with these metadata tags that let us kind of align the data, so we know that this is the English and this is the Irish version of the same text. We also need to do things like splitting the sentences automatically. There's scripts that check that the documents are indeed, this is the Irish and this is the English of the same text. There's things that you might need to do, like detokenization, where some text has been processed already and we're like, okay, we want to revert it back to its original form. True casing, where a text might be all in capitals or all in lowercase, and we're trying to reconstruct how that text should look with capitalization. And then sometimes you just want to remove boilerplate. If every single page in a document has the same title or subscript, then it's not necessarily the most useful information to include. So we might remove that. Or say, if you're taking data that was once hosted on a website and there's a lot of HTML code still left in, you maybe want to remove that. Okay, so I think I'm getting close to the end of my time. So I'm going to skip talking about outreach. Basically, we try and engage with the public and talk to them about what language data is. And same at the EU level, we're trying to engage with different EU initiatives. And just look a little bit at research. So some of the research work that we look at, all these different kind of research questions going on, where we're very interested in, how do we use data sets that have already been shared online more effectively? And so one of the data sets that we've looked at is Irish Wikipedia. So we have, a question maybe, why do we want domain-specific data? Well, very often this comes down to what kind of language is used in different domains. So this is an example of a text that was, where did this one originate? Okay, so many, I think this was text that was uploaded to the eSTÓR platform. And so the source data was this monolingual text. It uses the word tairseach, which is an Irish word meaning gateway or portal or threshold, sort of used for the, what's it called? I think it's the lintel of the door. I think that sort of sense of like standing in the doorway. So you can see that an e-translation engine, which is EU's official machine translation engine, translated that word as gateway, while Google Translate used portal. And in fact, if you asked Gemini to translate that, then it's selected gateway as the word. So the type of translation you use can actually depend on what data the system has already been exposed to. So Wikipedia is a very interesting source of data because it has very specific terminology that relates to different topics. So we would call that domain-specific data. So we started by taking text from Wikipedia. We call this monolingual data, so it's just in Irish, there's no English translation. And then we did some pre-processing and filtering on that data to try and extract just the data that we can consider useful for machine translation. And then we use a process called back translation, where we basically take that text that's in a certain format and we translate it automatically using a machine translation engine. And now suddenly we have English-Irish parallel data, which can be then used in training a different system. So it's kind of a way to hack the lack of data that we have for Irish. And Wikipedia data was very interesting because we found it had lots of interesting features. So things like quotes from people that would be not necessarily in our data that we would usually collect. So we want to keep those in. So if there's somebody has quoted some poetry, then we keep that tag that says C quote. So this is kind of information that you'd find when you look at when you're editing a Wikipedia page and you have the metadata tags. Another interesting feature is the category, or category in Irish. Basically, if an article has been tagged with a category, then we can use that data. We can say, oh, okay, this category is sort of like the domain that this text belongs to. So I actually don't know what this word means. I think it might be a chemistry term or biology term. But it does allow us to group similar articles together. So that's very cool. And so another thing we have to worry about is sentence splitting when the text is a little bit non-standard. So this is an example here, which is quoting this type of sound that a bird makes. So the bird goes two, two, two. And so we maybe want to split that up into different sentences because, the ellipsis kind of makes us think that it should be handled like an individual sentence, but maybe that's incorrect. Maybe we want to keep that all together as one block of text. Okay, so I think that's about all I have time to talk about. This is some pictures of our team. But Gurav Mila Mahagwiv, or thank you very much. And hopefully if you have any questions, I can answer those.
Abigail, thank you so much for sharing your work, all the wonderful things eSTÓR is doing, and also thank you for the Wikipedia mention. Lots of great discussion and engagement as well going on in the chat during that presentation and our previous presentation. So we're going to get started in a moment with the Q&A. So if you haven't already, please put questions for our amazing speakers in the chat. And if you could put question in all capitals, it'll just help us identify which questions you want us to read out. But I'm going to hand over to Gemma now to go through the questions we've collected over the last couple of hours.
All right, thank you, Amy. Let's have a look. Let's start with one that I think might actually, it was addressed to Abigail, but I think actually it might speak to a few speakers. So the question was from Fahad. What do you feel could serve as a locomotive to increase Irish use popularity for daily use? So maybe I'll start this with Abigail, but then if any of the other speakers want to kind of jump in kind of from their perspectives as well.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. I feel slightly unqualified to answer this. I work on language technology, and the hope of developing these tools is that we enable the language to be used in digital spaces where it otherwise would be not. It might be underserved by tools. So something like searching for a term, but using, Irish language. So the process where languages sort of disappear from digital spaces where they're not really well served by the tools is something called digital extinction. And we found this kind of similar to how when the printing press was created, a lot of regional languages disappeared because they didn't have resources available to them in their native language. So they started adopting the larger languages of the regions that were, being served by books and literature. So similarly, we can maybe predict, and we're seeing already, the digital extinction of languages where they're young people especially aren't using them online because they can't, because there's no point in using them because the tools just don't work as well. So that's a big hope. By developing better tools for Irish language, it's not just cool and trendy research, it's actually creating a digital environment where the languages can be used online just as any other language would be.
Thank you. Did any of the other speakers want to kind of jump in from their kind of context, something that you would want to add to that? It's a pretty thorough answer.
I could probably add a couple of things, but can you repeat the question again?
Yeah,
I
so
didn't fully hear.
Yeah, so what could serve as a locomotive to increase Irish use, popularity for daily use, but I think more broadly, what could encourage, because we had a bit of a conversation in the chat about sort of Breton having 50% of the speakers being over 80, and obviously there was the statistic about the discrepancy between Irish comprehension and Irish daily use. So kind of for those smaller, more minoritized languages, what can improve daily use of those languages?
I, of course, can't speak from the Irish perspective, but I could speak from the perspective of my own language or my own dialect. My dialect is actually spoken less and less these days, as the standard variant is sort of a neighboring variant. So as you move from one place to another, and if places are well connected, then people tend to use the most dominant variant among the different dialects, and that's what my my native tongue suffers from. And I guess this applies to most underrepresented languages. But what I have seen is languages become popular through different mediums that are widely used, right? Somebody wrote about TikTok or music festivals. Those are the places where everybody goes, and everybody could relate to music. Everybody could relate to videos that are shared and are short, doesn't require a lot of attention span, especially young people suffer from having longer attention spans, and particularly those who grew up with the digital only receiving information, like me who read books, is very different as an experience. So Gen Zs and younger people, it is very important to also cater to different subgroups within the language speakers. Sometimes a lot of people focus only on documenting the grammar and publishing books that young people don't like to really spend time on. That might be useful for some, but that might not be at all useful for young people. In those contexts, it's very important to create resources that are appreciated by young people. And so that's one aspect. The other aspect is how easy and open it is to share something. So when something is available on social media, it's quite easy. It's very convenient. So convenience is the key to sharing anything in a language. And I've seen political messaging really going far and wide because it's easy, and they primarily target ways through which they can actually reach out to masses, reach out to more number of people, as many number of voters, for instance. There was AI generated regional language messaging that was quite popular by the alt-right political party here in India. And the messages went really far and wide because what they did is they used AI literally to generate content that was not spoken by the politician in dialects and languages that are widely spoken by people, but are not documented in written forms. And the politician actually won the election. That was just to give an example what might work in different contexts.
Thank you. Okay. Just for the sake of time, then I'll move on to another one. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take a question, and then we're going to open it a little wider. So the question initially was specifically for Hugo around Lingua Libre. And I think we had a bit of conversation about the chat about somebody adding to things but feels like they shouldn't add to their to pronunciations because they're not a level 1 speaker of Welsh, French, Spanish. They were worried about the quality of their pronunciations. So they were asking, should they still add their audio? Is it better to add to avoid adding potentially confusing accent and dialect mixtures? But I guess then perhaps to the other speakers as well, after Hugo, is just that what do you think is the balance between wanting obviously to encourage people to contribute towards minoritized languages, but what perhaps if they are a learner or that, you know, there might be kind of gaps in their knowledge, kind of any thoughts you might have about that? So Hugo?
Yes, for the first part, yes, we want the diversity of language. Actually, by example, for French, we already have about 10 active metropolitan French people, and we don't need 15 or 20. That's again the same demographic, the same kind of voice, and so on. And we want diversity in terms of geography. For French language, which is spread around the world. We have French spoken in Haiti, in Polynesia, in the Pacific Island, in Africa, in Arabic country, and so on. So we want the geographic diversity. We also want the age difference, the gender difference. There is also sociolect, what we call sociolects, the way to speak, which are different depending on your socioeconomic situation. So all this has meaning and can be studied. And for people who love language, we love the specifics and the characteristic of each of these way to speak. So this is the first thing. And of course, the Lingua Libre was designed. My idea and the way we push Lingua Libre is we ride the wave of larger language to serve the smaller language. So most of our contributors are French, English, and developers and Indian majority demographic. But the true aim is to go for the diversity of language. And the diversity is not in the 10 larger language. The diversity is in the 7,000 language. So yeah, we want all kind of language, all kind of sample, and all kind of voice, also accent and so on.
Thank you, Hugo. So there we are. So there's a very warm welcome there for Lingua Libre. What about any other speakers kind of thinking about that balance of kind of perhaps protecting a potentially vulnerable minoritized language without also wanting to kind of draw a very broad, open lens? Any thoughts that any other speakers want to jump in on?
Yeah, I could say a few words. Yeah, I think absolutely we need all different types of recordings, from people that are learners, people that are experienced. We need male voices and female voices, old and young. You know, the sound clip of a learner saying a place name might not be the one that you add to the article, but it's really important to have that diversity there to show the different ways that the language is spoken, because that reflects the reality of what you would hear if you walk down the street, you know. So I think that's really important, and that's what's great about Lingua Libre as well. It gives you that flexibility. It allows you to say where the speaker lives, the level of proficiency they have in the language, and you can store all that in the data that goes with the sound clip.
Thank you, Jason.
If I may add, also the geographic diversity is also important, because, by example, you are listening to me in English, but you can clearly say that I'm French. Okay, that's fine. And when I speak French, I come from the southwest part of France, and we have a way to speak French which is particular. And when we dive a bit, it's we inherited the syllables and the sound of the previous local language, which, and for Occitan, which disappeared and so on. So when you have an accent, it also carry a very strong and deep history about you speak English, you speak French, you speak this large language, but you carry with you your heritage and your phonetic heritage to this language. And so we want to record this when it's here. So our grandparents have this very much. We have it less, and we have to rush and to race to record this diversity.
Yeah.
I try to keep short.
No, thank you, Hugo. Nicolas, so you're going to unmute as well.
Yeah. Very quickly, yeah, more diversity is always good. And I think the more important is to tag exactly what you are recording, writing. I see that there's a question about, I'm guessing, an Irish old orthography or something like that. And it's very important because we try to preserve smaller language. Oh, sorry. We try to preserve smaller languages, but sometimes we standardize it, we museified it, and we forgot that, oh, but there's the dialect this or there. And I know if it's very important for Britain because 3 of the dialects are very close, but there's one in the south quite different. And it's always forgotten, and or it's forgotten, or AI doesn't understand it, or when it's generated, it's not, yeah, yada problem. So we need to preserve diversity in all languages, but inside all of the languages. And if you tag it, yeah, it's the best pronunciation, you can use it on Wikipedia, or it's a archaic pronunciation, don't use it, or everything. It's the tagging that is very important to know what we are talking about. Or it's not an error, it's a different dialect. Like the car, she is beautiful. It's correct English in Newfoundland. But who know that Newfoundland still use a gender pronoun for cars and things like that? No one. So there's that.
Thank you very much. Amy, there's one in the chat that I think you've mentioned, but I'm going to ask you to read it out because it has a couple of Irish words in that I'm not going to say correctly. So I'm going to lean on you for that one.
Fiber bit, no problem. So Eamon's just asking there, particularly to Abigail. So when books are scanned, books which are printed pre-1953, example, not in an Caidán Ifigúil, which just means the official standard of Irish, can be used without being converted to the Caidán. So
yeah, sorry, I was actually in the middle of typing a response. But essentially the digitization that we're doing is actually a collection of documents produced by the translation department at Rannog an Astracan. So it's legal documents, but they date from 1960 onwards. So we actually don't have any documents from 1953 or before. However, maybe it's interesting. There does seem to be some non-standard dialect kind of coming in, especially in the earlier documents we have. So that is actually something that we have to account for is while Caidán Ifigúil was introduced, it does seem like it wasn't consistently used by the translators at that time period. So the older documents do have to be standardized then. I think we're taking a very delicate approach with the digitization and the let's say software engineer who's working on these documents. She would be in contact then with Rannog an Astracan, so they would have some say about whether they wanted something to be recorded in as it appeared in the old document or whether it should be updated with a standard form. So yeah, that is something to another challenge to overcome when you're digitizing work from a while ago.
Thank you. I'm mindful of time, so I'm just going to do one more question, but I've got some of the ones that we haven't answered. I might try and see if we can kind of get answers and put them on the ether pad. I think I can see a hand up. Is that Owen with a hand up? No.
No, and certainly if it is, not deliberately.
No, okay. Then in that case, I'll ask a quick wiki question for the last one then. So question from Andy. Any cross-linking between eSTÓR and Wikidata in either direction, or is that something that kind of is a potential source for future?
Great question. We don't work with Wikidata directly. However, there is a researcher who is doing work on using Wikidata in natural language generation, which is where you produce like running text, which you know, with Wikidata triples, can be used to create these sentences that include the information. And I will try and share some of his research in the chat. I just don't have it to hand right now, but yeah, that is something that is kind of ongoing at the moment, and maybe we'll get more involved with that and see how we can collaborate between the 3 different research groups.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, I don't want to keep us anymore, so thank you very much. There were a couple of smaller questions that I will try and add to the Etherpad afterwards. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. That's the end of Celtic Knot, and we'll share the recording once that is done. And yeah, thank you very much. Diolch pawb.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.